Hello, my students. Welcome you back to the lessons on professionalism in interpretation and translation. Today, we are going to talk about some last types of editing. Firstly, in module number 6, we have content editing. And in module number 7, we will have the lessons on trans editing. You will see that these ones are not the popular kinds of editing. However, you should still be well equipped with the knowledge of the two types. However, it is not the focus of our topic, so I will merge the two modules into one video like this. Now, let's start with the first type here, the content editing. Content editing is what? What is content editing? Content editing is tracking and amending a text for its ideas, what it says about the subject matter. Okay, so as with structural editing, content editing takes place both on a large scale or the macro level and the small scale on the micro level. This module will be mainly concerned with those micro level, okay, which translators are most commonly called upon to perform, namely the correction of factual, logical, and mathematical errors. No fast and hard boundary can be drawn between outright errors of fact on the one hand and problems such as obscure passages or confused theoretical notions on the other. This will all be discussed together under the heading factual errors. Okay. So, firstly, we want to talk about the macro level content editing. Editor may suggest or require major changes in the coverage of a document's topic. Major additions or subtraction may be requested in order to make the text suitable for the audience. Okay, in order to include some of the latest developments in the subject, or in order to distinguish a book from others on the same topic. Sometimes major subtractions will be needed in order to make the text fit the available space. Okay, so with some text, how macro level content is macro level content editing is closely tied to the social gatekeeper function of editors. That is, editor may be acting on behalf of an institution with an ideological purpose. They may be employed to censor written materials before publication by removing passages that are ideologically unacceptable. The government, for example, may employ editors to reword text with a view to covering other unpleasant facts with euphemism or vagueness, or editors may simply reject submission to the publication of rights. Newspaper or particular political complexes come to mind in this connection. Okay, so what is next? With the development of the internet, the ethical content editor has a professional commitment to truth. The truth. There are two aspects to this. One is the avoidance of unintentional falsehood. For this purpose, many publishing organizations employ special fact-checkers. The second aspect is the avoidance of deception by ensuring that the published item tells the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Also, if there are certain well-known objections to the author's argument, these are at least admitted, if not answered. Selecting function of editors is a kind of two as words. Why so? On the one hand, the editor may select in order to conceal the truth, which may be deemed dangerous or simply offensive. On the other hand, the selection may be made in the service of quality. For example, many people prefer to join internet discussions forums, which have a moderator that is the content editor, because they do not want to spend huge amounts of time wading through the material that is either of no interest or obnoxious. They trust the moderator to select well-written and well-thought-out contributions representing a diversity of views. Just another characteristic of a ethical content editor will be, still very trustworthiness. So, what is the next one? We are going to talk about the factual errors. One reason specialized text need to be content edited by subject matter specialists is that others may not recognize factual errors, but factual errors may also come up in otherwise unspecialized text, and it will not always be obvious. Okay, but if there is an error, read the listen to the following passage and decide whether you have not read it in a chapter about correcting content errors, and you would have recognized the problems. So listen to the text. In a plain-looking shot in the untouristy 19th arrondissement, a 1932 edition of George Orwell 1984 in dust jacket recently sold for $10. So what is wrong? This certainly was an unusual find, since the first edition of Orwell's novel was not published until 1949. So factual errors also include simple things like incorrect street addresses, very popular, or incorrect website addresses, not quite right book titles or names of organization, and incorrect references. Such fast-tracking used to involve some rather tedious searches through almanacs, yearbooks, telephone directories, and other reference groups, but nowadays much of the information is available on the internet. So to check that a web address is correct, just try to go to the site using a browser. If the translation is to be posted at a website, links should lead the reader to a target language site if possible and appropriate. So, a final and very important type and fact of the fact that has also to be checked is the accuracy of quotation. If the source of a quotation cannot be tracked down, then the quotation mark should be removed and indirect speech used instead. If the quoted material was spoken rather than written, the quotation doesn't normally need to be a verbatim transcript. And when we check copy editing for its factual errors, we also talk about the conceptual errors and obscure passages. Normally, people writing in their own field of expertise do not make errors in field-specific concepts. So that is normally. So the non-expert popularizer, frequently make conceptual errors. The non-expert, For example, some columnists in newspapers often discuss evolution with in non-Darwinian teleological language. Another problem very common is passages where, as a result of poor writing, it is hard to see what the author is trying to say. We say the obscure passages, and in some editing situations, the author may not be reachable. You cannot reach the author for any clarification, and you yourself must then decide on a course of action. And another is when you want to copy edit is a kind of errors that is and introduced. Worse than failing to see an error is introducing an error, right, where none existed. At the end of module number 4, we saw two cases where a conceptual error were introduced in the course of stylistic editing. Conceptual error may be also introduced if you fail to take the author's wording seriously. So consider a text in which a prisoner is described as doing something for fear of being congratulated by the warden. An editor unthinkingly assumed this was an error and changed congratulated to punished. But the text made perfect sense as it stood. The prisoner didn't want to be seen by other prisoners as the warden's pets. Now I want to talk about another error. It is logical error. This category of error includes things like contradictions, nonsense, tautologies, impossible time sequences, and confusions of cause and effect. Look at the example. First one, the mother tongue of nearly 650,000 Canadians of English. Ethnic origins is English, and this represents more than 10% of Canadians of French origins. So, do you find it hard to understand? The mother tongue of nearly 650,000 Canadians of French ethnic origin is English. What is wrong? Okay, so you can see that. Okay, another example of contradictory. For example, A about it is very nonsense. Now is another example of contradictory time sequence. Okay, so here's another example of contradictory time sequence. Read the whole samples first. At a news conference today in San France, IBM and Apple said that they will disclose further details about their plans for linking computers, creating new software, and advancing computer chip technology. The news conference will be held at the Fairmont Hotel. So, you will see that it appears that the new conference has already occurred. So the second sentence here is very confusing, right? Why to say will be held, whereas it appears that the news conference has already occurred. Okay. So once again, you need to be alert to notice the errors exemplified above. It is very easy to skip past them if your attention is not on meaning. And the next is a kind of mathematical error. Editors and translators are language people who perhaps thought that they would never have to deal with math again. After graduating from secondary school, they avoid scientific and technical translation, but in fact, mathematical issues arise in many texts which are not scientific, technical, or financial. Sometimes a mathematical error just arises from carelessness. For example, look at this example. The decimal point is in the wrong place, or the additional is wrong. 68% of the respondents to a survey were men and 42% were women. We can't make a 100% from the 268 and 42 numbers, right? So harder to spot actually are cases where the writers who are not mathematically inclined have shaped up conceptually like the journalists. Okay. Other errors can be the running off, the time, the space. Okay. So now I want to talk about the quite last section of this module, the second to last, the content editing during translation. The factual, logical, and mathematical errors discussed above may of course be present in your source text when you are translating. Unless instructed otherwise, you should correct logical and mathematical errors in the translation and append a note to the client pointing them out so that action can be taken to correct the source text if the client will be publishing the source along with the translation. Factual errors should be corrected if they seem to be inadvertent, but not if they are important as indicators of the author's ignorance of the facts. In the latter case, you may want to indicate that the errors is due to the author, not the translator, by writing in the body of the text. Okay. So the source text has been content edited before translated. It will be correct. Yeah, work with the translator. Okay, and the translator may also need to make minor additions to explain, for example, geographical or cultural features that may not be familiar to the target readers. And now I want to walk you through the last discussions on content editing after translation. Unfortunately, when translations of scientific and technical texts are published, the task of content editing may be omitted. The source text may be sent for translation before content editing, and then no one thinks to have the translation edited for content. Alternatively, if the source text has been content edited before translation, it may be assumed that there is then no need to content edit the translation. It will automatically be correct. This assumption is wrong since translators often do not have the relevant scientific or technical education and are prone to inadvertently introducing factual or conceptual errors. So, where scientific editors do not know the source language, they should work with the translator so that when they have queries about some point in the translation, the translator will be able to tell them whether the query pertains to some features of the source or the translator's interpretation. And that is the end of module number 6. Now we have the very last type of editing taught in this course. It is chance editing. Chance editing as used here means editing during translation that is not restricted to the small-scale changes discussed in module number 4 to module number 6 above. Extensive changes are allowed, recommended, or even required. So again, when we talk about chance editing, we talk about the macro level, okay, changes beyond the words, beyond the phrases, and more so specifically on major structural editing and major content editing. In professional settings, a combination of such large-scale structural and content editing is very common. And chance editing is most often discussed in connection with a news translation, and the examples and discussions here will most look at the journalistic chance editing between English and Korean. However, I want you to think of a translation case between English and Vietnamese to illustrate theories discussed in this section. Okay, so anyway, look at the first example here. On the top screen, on the top, you can see the English source, and here is the translated Korean version. Okay, so the English text has been translated into Korean, and then, okay, a translator translate the Korean version back into English, back translated into English, and then another translator, okay, back translated the version in English into another version. But in this one we say trans-edited Korean version. So the English version that is by translated is trans-edited, and the last one is the trans-edited Korean version. So example 1 here shows two translations of an English source text. The first by a translator and the second by a trans-editing journalist. Okay, so here is the English source. It is translated into Korean, and then the Korean version is back translated into English, which then is trans-edited. Okay, which then is trans-edited, and finally the trans-edited Korean version, which are back translated into English, are trans-edited into Korean version. Now let's read the content of the source text. Apple Incorporation and Goldman Sachs Group Incorporation are preparing to launch a new Joy credit card, a move that would deepen the technology China puts into its customer wallets and mark the worship firm's first foray into plastic. The planned card would carry the Apple Pay brand and could launch early next year. People familiar with the matter says Apple will replace its long-standing rewards card partnership with Barclays, the People said. Tập đoàn Apple và tập đoàn Goldman đang chuẩn bị ra mắt một cái thẻ tín dụng chung mới. Đây là một động thái làm thắt chặt hơn nữa cái bước đi của gã khổng lồ công nghệ với thị trường, với túi tiền của khách hàng, và đánh dấu cái phiên bản của hãng Wall Street thành nhựa, sử dụng nhựa, và cái thẻ ra mắt này sẽ chứa nhãn hiệu Apple Pay và có thể ra mắt vào đầu năm tới. Những người quen thuộc với vấn đề này cho biết, và Apple cũng sẽ thay thế các cái thẻ lâu nay của mình. Okay. Vậy những cái đối tác thẻ lâu nay của mình với Barclays People cho hay. So you will see that in the first paragraph here, the translation, like the source, gives equal weight to both companies, whereas the trans-edited version focused, if you have read it, this one focused on what? On Apple. Okay. Similarly, in the second paragraph, the trans-edited version omits the bit about Barclays. Goldman Sachs Barclays do provide consumer banking services in Korea and will therefore be of less interest to the reader, while Apple is a very popular smartphone brand. Alright, so think of a Vietnamese case if you can find it. The trans-editor also restructure the source text for various reasons. Normally they change the order of the paragraphs. Now here's another example. This one is the English source. một cái thước đo này sự tăng trưởng kinh tế Mỹ trong tương lai. Edge up đó là trước to its highest level kể từ tháng 4 năm 2011. Trong khi đó tỷ lệ tăng trưởng hàng năm vẫn giữ mức khá là ổn định. Một nhóm nghiên cứu cho biết vào hôm thứ Sáu. Nhóm dự báo này là một cơ quan độc lập có hội sở tại New York có tên là Viện Nghiên cứu Chu trình Kinh tế. Đây là một nhóm nghiên cứu độc lập, nhóm dự báo độc lập có trụ sở tại New York có tên là Viện Nghiên cứu Chu trình Kinh tế. Và hôm thứ Tư nói rằng là chỉ số dẫn đầu hàng tuần đã tăng tới 131,3 điểm trong tuần, đúng không ạ? Ok, cho tuần từ 19 tháng 7 đến so you see the translated correct version here. Chỉ số dẫn đầu hạng mục kinh tế của Mỹ trong tuần trước đã tăng tới ngưỡng cao nhất kể từ tháng 4 năm 2011. So the order of the paragraph has been changed. Và cũng theo cái học viện dự báo kinh tế độc lập này thì chỉ số leading hàng tuần this organization that decreased over the week ending July from 2. So you can see a lot of changes in the order of the paragraphs, right? We have more examples. So the structural and the chart editor have done something, and the ideological disposition of the organization they are looking for may require them to restructure a text. They have to base themselves on the ideological disposition. Alright. So now I want to walk you through the next discussions on content chart editing. These kind of chart editor are affected by difference in rhetorical and yarn convention, and sometimes they also add a considerable amount of information. They can add something, and they have to be sure of the source of the information, to make sure that they are authentic and reliable. They can cut, just to highlight more significant information. They can contain diverse opposing views, and they can be knowledgeable of journalistic conventions, like this one. This one is a layout for a piece of news. And maybe the second to last discussion here is on combined structure and content chart editing. In professional studies, you will likely perform content and structure chart editing at the same time. Suppose you are just editing the text for Korean readers, and the English source is from the Korea Herald, one of the Korean major English language newspaper, whose main readers are native English speakers, right? But in this case, it is sure that you have to combine both structural and content chart editing. The same case happens between when you done something in Vietnamese and English. The last discussion here is on chart editing with changed text type and chart editing from multiple source text. So you see that the discussion so far has concerned chart editing that results in a translation whose text type is the same as the source. However, chart editors are often required to change the text type. Suppose you are given a source text in example 4 and asked to produce promotional material based on the news about KIST, one of the 2 South Korean universities among the top 20 entries. With regard to content chart editing, you should select the content which can most effectively highlight the achievements of the university. Specifically, you should identify whether the ranking changed from the previous years, and if so, how many steps is moved, and where the university stands compared to other universities in the region and around the world. The KIRST's higher ranking in rather than other Korean universities should be clearly stated. You could also add information which is not given in the source, not given in the source in order to serve the purpose of the translation. And as it happens, the source provides a hyperlink to a function that compares any two universities, and you click on it to retrieve necessary information for the edition. For just editing from multiple source text, then the degree of your intervention will be even greater when you produce a translation based on more than one source text, and the text type of the translation differs from that of any of the sources. This type of text editing involves so much content and structural transformation that the result might be considered a new text rather than a translation. The news organization often combines several articles into one to provide a comprehensive yet very brief picture of an event or incident in one country for the readers in another country, or to highlight an ideology they support. Similarly, research institutes publish papers based on a number of research articles written at home or abroad that will support their arguments or findings. The governments produce foreign language promotional materials on tourism or policies by trans-editing a number of book chapters, news stories, or research papers. Then, the trans-editors are asked to select content from multiple sources and organize information in a way that fulfills the purpose of the translation. The amount of content extracted from each source varies from a word or phrase to a few paragraphs or even an entire text. Non-verbal content such as images, sounds, or warblings can be added as well. So, with regard to the structure, the text editor organizes the selected content regardless of the logical flow of any of the sources. With such assignments, your role as a text editor is similar to that of an author, and you therefore need text authoring skills. So thank you for your watching and listening to the lessons on contents and text editing. That is all for now. Goodbye.